The Elden Ring Nightreign network test has come and gone, and aside from a few hands-on events for some content creators, this is the first time that the general public has gotten to play the game. Now, I want to stress a few points first before we get into the video. This isn't a full representation of the final game. About half of the playable characters were available during the network test, and there was just one final boss. And unfortunately, the last caveat that I have is that I don't really have any footage. It looks like this. Is what I would say if I wasn't able to get some crispy footage on the second network test event that I was able to play. So we actually do have some footage. I don't have all of the characters in the footage. I have played all the characters at least for one round, but I did not capture it during the second because there was just a lot going on and I just wanted to have fun. Now, while I did get this footage, my monitor looked like this. So I had to play through like the OBS viewer, which was fine. It ended up working out, and we even beat the boss while I was playing it that way. Now, with all of that said, let's go to the main question that everybody has about Nightreign. Is it fun? Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really fun, in my opinion. I think that it was a very refreshing change from the slow, methodical gameplay of a Souls. Now, if that's all you wanted to know, then go ahead and click off the video. But before you do, please just leave a like, and you know what? Maybe subscribe while you're down there if you're enjoying it. It helps a lot. Now, I would like to stress that while the game is fun, there's a huge asterisk to that. And a lot of that comes from the fact that this is just not a fully finished game yet. Now, I had my fair share of issues with the game. There are a few things that it's hard to tell if it's something that's baked into the game itself or if it's just something that we had to experience in a weird way because of the network test. Let's talk about the game proper, though. So before you set out from Roundtable Hold, there are a few things that you can do. There is a training ground where you can test out different weapons and buffs and items, and you can see what each character is about, which is a big part of this game, is the characters. That they're pretty unique. And you know what? Let's talk about that first. I did not get footage of all of them, so I can't show you everything properly like I probably should, but I can explain what they do pretty well. So each character has an ability, an ultimate, and a passive. The ability is on a pretty short cooldown relative to its impact on the game, and then there is, of course, the ultimate, which is a big, longer cooldown. You use it, and it creates a big impact on the game. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe you can get both back by dealing damage a bit quicker. Now that we're done with the preamble, though, let's get into talking about each specific character that we had access to during the network test. There were 4 out of the total 8 that will come with the launch of the game. We had Wilder, the Guardian, the Duchess, and the Recluse. Wilder is the jack of all trades, master of none type character. He is the character who's good at building for anything you really want to, but he's not quite the min-max good for that build. His ability is a grappling hook, which pulls smaller enemies towards you or you towards bigger enemies. It can also be used to reposition during a fight because you can grapple the ground or traverse the map at a bit of an increased speed. It's really interesting how much you can do with it, actually, because you can say at a distance while a boss is doing a big combo, and instead of having to dodge everything to maximize that punish window, you wait for the combo to end and then pull yourself over to the boss, and suddenly you are able to maximize your damage against that boss for its punish. Now, Wilder's ultimate is probably what sets him up as what I would deem one of, if not the best characters in the network test. It's effectively just a pocket nuke. So it has two modes of fire. It's got a quick shot and a charge shot. The quick shot does significantly less damage. He kind of readies his crossbow arm and then does a real quick shoot out of the explosion, and it shoots him back. And that's probably the biggest difference between the two modes, is that the quick shot mode sends you flying. Now, his charged up shot, I think, is going to be what gets ultimates nerfed across the board. Right now, in the network test, ultimates, when you cast them, make you invulnerable. So if a boss is winding up a big hit and you decide to charge or use an ultimate, you negate all the damage. It just goes right through you, which does ultimately make his quick shot almost redundant, because again, the biggest difference between the two fire modes is that the quick shot sends you back out away from the danger at a reduced cost of damage. Now, it also does only use half of the meter, but I don't think that it's really worth it to do that. Whereas his charge shot, you're in an invulnerable state, charging up the biggest hit in the entire game, as far as I was able to tell. And it will do a ton of stagger damage to the boss. So ultimately, you'll probably send the boss down for a riposte and not have to worry about getting repositioned. You're not going to have to worry about a counter hit from the boss, because the boss is going to be too busy being staggered. So it's either going to do less posture damage, it's going to do less damage overall, or it may well just get the entire thing nerfed, where instead of being invulnerable, you just take reduced damage during an ultimate, because it was good. It was way too good, in my opinion. Now, let's tone back the energy a little bit and talk about Wilder's passive. It's pretty basic relative to the pocket nuke that is his ult, and the incredible grappling hook that is on probably too short a cooldown, maybe. And that's the passive that lets him survive one lethal hit per game. And it can have a big impact depending on when you take that lethal hit. If it's significantly further into the game where the damage is significantly higher, then it could mean the difference between your team getting through a boss and wiping. But if you spend it in the early game, then it's just gone. You'll never survive a lethal hit again. So it's not great. Like, it has potential, and that's the biggest thing about the kit as a whole, is it has a ton of potential. Some things are just better than others, and his ultimate is just probably too good. Probably. Now, that's kind of all I really have to say about Wilder, so let's move on to the next character.
Guardian? Eyes up, Guardian. Worked. You're alive.
Okay, so the Guardian, Birdman, whatever you want to call him. He's a bit boring to me, and I'm going to be a bit brief with him just because I don't have footage, and he's not super interesting. His passive is he has a unique guard stance that uses reduced stamina when blocking hits, which is just not my preferred style of play. I'm more of a dodge-heavy Souls character. I prefer learning boss patterns rather than just sitting behind his shield and being like, okay, it's my turn now. Now his ability is kind of neat. He does like that whirlwind stomp where the some of the enemies in Stormvale, some of the knights in Stormvale from the base game did it, where they do this wind stomp and around them enemies get knocked up. His ultimate, though, I mean, is pretty useful, actually. He ascends into the air and then does a dive bomb on a location that deals AoE damage, which can be used to take out crowds of large enemies. It can be used to revive a teammate that's down next to an enemy. And when you hold the input, you will stay with your sword lodged in the ground, and around you, your allies will take reduced damage, while you either take, I'm not sure if it's no damage or just really, really reduced damage until you break the stance. That's really all I have to say about the Guardian. I mean, he, like I said, is just not super interesting to me. So let's just move on to the other best character in the network test. So the Duchess, the other character who can fight for the title of strongest character in the network test, and unless they do some crazy things with the other characters, probably just the best character in the game. She is by far the most impactful with her ability rather than her ultimate like the other characters. There is a reason that on the network test guide website, it shows Wilder's ultimate, the Guardian's ultimate, the Recluse's ultimate, and the Duchess's regular ability, because it is insane. So when you deal damage and then press the ability button, the enemies around the Duchess will just take the last 2 seconds of damage, but this time it's again. So think about it. You got 2 Wilders on your team. They both run up to a boss and pop their ult within 2 seconds of each other. So now the Duchess walks up and says, "Oh, what's that? I turned your 2 ultimates on this boss into 4 with an ability." Keep in mind, the cooldown on the abilities is like 10 seconds or something. It's so fast. Now, her ultimate is much less impactful than that, which isn't to say that it's bad by any means. What she does is she shrouds herself and her teammates and makes them harder to detect, which can be really useful if one of your teammates goes down during a boss fight. You can just use that ultimate, and then the boss will drop aggro. You can run over and quickly get your teammate up before the boss has time to re-aggro you. Now, her passive is weird. I mean, everything that I saw was effectively your dodge spam is just better. On the website and in-game, it just says that she dodges optimally, which I don't know, but she does have a cool, like, backflip thing when she dodges backwards twice, and if she dodges in a direction twice, then she does a unique animation, which is cool. And her dodge is also very reminiscent of the quick step from Bloodborne, which is, hey, Bloodborne remaster. What the heck happened to that at the state of play? Now, while I may have less to say about the Duchess than I do about Wilder, it's not because she's any less broken than Wilder. She's just broken in a different way, and I feel like I played more and understood Wilder's kit a lot more than the Duchess's. I feel like the Duchess has a bit higher of a skill floor than Wilder, but probably also as a result a higher skill ceiling. Wilder's just easier to pick up and play and understand everything that's happening, whereas the Duchess is just like, it's a world, and I don't know when to use my ultimate. Oh, my teammate just went down in this boss fight. I guess that's a good time. It's just a difference of understanding.
Hagrid, you're pushing me over the fucking line!
No, I'm not! You are a wizard!
Okay, so, the Recluse. The Recluse is probably the most complex character, and if they somehow make a more complex character in the base game, they can't be as useless is the wrong term, but as useless as the recluse. Now, I do say that she's complex completely seriously. She is the most complex. She has the most moving parts. Very weird and hard to fully grasp. But that does not mean that she is not a fun character. Oh my word. Very, very interesting. That complexity breeds a lot of interesting gameplay loops. Her kit is like purely synergistic, so you can't really explain one without touching on the others. The only one that's kind of off by itself is the ultimate, that it doesn't have as much interaction. And the ultimate is called Soul Blood Song. And what it does is it marks enemies in an area around her and puts a little thing on them. And anybody who hits enemies that have that mark will regain HP and FP when they do it. And it lasts for a decent amount of time, in my opinion. So you can get some pretty good sustain out of it while still not really laying off the aggression. It's pretty good. Now, let's talk about her unique gameplay loop. Like I said, there's a lot of synergy between her passive and her ability. You can't really talk about one without talking about the other. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. And they both use a very unique mechanic that is hers, and so far hers alone, called elemental affinities. What happens is when you deal a specific element of damage, be it magic, fire, holy, and lightning, it will put a little circle on the enemy. When it puts the little circle on the enemy, you can use your active ability to suck that circle off of them and put it in your pocket. When you do that, her passive kicks in and restores a pretty good amount of FP back to her so she can continue the loop. Now, once you've put three elemental affinities in her pocket, then she can use her active again and throw out what's called a magic cocktail. The magic cocktail is different depending on what ingredients are used. So, for example, if you use all magic, then she will throw out a little homing guy that does periodical magic damage to whatever she threw it at. And it tracks along with it, so it follows them along. If she uses all fire, then she will pull out a huge fireball and throw it at an enemy, and it creates a big fire on the ground. So you can really keep the snowball rolling. If you use a mixture of magic and fire, and it doesn't matter if you've got 2 magic and 1 fire or 1 magic and 2 fires, it's the same as long as the only 2 elements that you have are magic and fire. You'll throw a little fire thing that follows them around, and it catches them on fire and occasionally does fire damage to them, and it's honestly, in my opinion, probably the weakest of the bunch. But there are so many different combinations and so many different ways that you can use these elemental debuffs and elements to do things. Like one of them, I think it was Fire and Holy Split, would let you put up a huge healing aura as if you had just thrown a glowing stone or a warming stone, whatever it's called. Now, with all that complexity, these magic cocktails kind of suck. I mean, they just don't do the damage that you need them to for the effort that it takes to use them. But that doesn't make it any less fun using them. Like, I love just whipping away, throwing my glint stones at somebody and marking them with magic, and then pulling the magic off of them, and then pulling the magic off of them, and then pulling the magic off of them, and then throwing a magic thing that does magic damage, and by the time it's done ticking, you've got another one because it does it at least 3 times, so you can pull the magic off of them 3 times at least, and throw out another one. It's fun. It's genuinely fun. It's just... it does no damage. They do no damage. The little magic thing, yeah, you'll get 3 magics back because it's not going to kill anybody. It's not going to do anything close to killing anybody. It's just not very good. Now, I will say, from my observations, she has got the community by the balls, and that's because her design is pretty good.
Say, you smell kind of pretty. Wanna smell me?
Alrighty. Those are all the characters in the network test, so I think it's finally time we move on to the actual gameplay. So after you choose your characters, you have to select what boss you want to hunt down, kind of like Monster Hunter. In the network test, we only had access to Triceratops, it's Tricephalos. So once you select a boss to hunt, you then matchmake with other people. And once you find a game, that's when you properly select what character you want to play for that game. It doesn't matter, you can run around in the lobby as whoever you want, but this is where you actually choose your character. Once you choose your character, you're given a starting point. It's sort of a whole configuration, and that is probably my biggest pain point with the network test and potentially the final product of the game, depending on whether or not it stays that way, is that you can tell what's going to happen in a game based off of where you spawn. So, for example, the most common spawn that I got during the network test was the spawn that's in the southern edge of the map, right by this fire temple, and that leads to the same boss for night 1, the same boss for night 2, and then obviously the same final boss, as well as different surprises, different mid-game surprises, such as Margit hunting you down. In the middle of it, that happens in the configuration that I played mostly, but it doesn't happen in the other configuration that I saw that was available. Now, during the network test, there were 2 configurations available, as far as I could tell. Maybe I just got really unlucky with how often I experienced the one versus the other. It could be a more even split. There could even have been more configurations, and I just got really unlucky. But that was my experience during the network test. When I say that I got one spawn more often than the other, I mean that in my at least 10 games that I played, I spawned in the other configuration maybe 2 or 3 times total. And I think it's probably closer that I played a total of 15 and still only got those 2 or 3 in the other spawn, which is a shame because I thought that the bosses were more fun to fight in the other configuration rather than the one that I got a lot. You know what? This is a great time to talk about bosses. So, From Software has a great history of their bosses. I mean, Dark Souls 1 had some killer bosses. Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, great bosses. Elden Ring base game and DLC, fantastic bosses. They have such a good history, and so let's just talk about the bosses that we've got. In the configuration 1, as I'll be referring to it, which is the main configuration that I played most of, the bosses for night 1 are a demi-human queen and a demi-human swordsman. The demi-human queen in base Elden Ring is just not a tough fight. I mean, it's just not that hard. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't have a lot of health. It doesn't do a lot of damage. And it's just not very... It's a throwaway mini-boss most of the time. But they did manage to scale up the health a bit because 3 players, it definitely needed more health. If it was too squishy for 1 person to beat, 3 would have just been ridiculous. So they did give it more HP, and I can't confirm that it had better moves or more moves. One thing I did notice is that I feel like I got bonked by the staff throw a lot. Now, I don't think I have any footage of it, but it did happen a pretty fair amount. The demi-human swordsman, on the other hand, pretty cool. He was pretty neat in the base game, or DLC, I guess. But he was pretty cool in Elden Ring. He was pretty quick. The biggest issue that I had with him is that he staggers way too easily. So, did they fix that in the... No, they did not. He staggers so easily. He is such a small little guy, Master Yoda, and it's really bad to the point where you can just have a couple wilders kind of grapple hook him back and forth, and he can't really do a whole lot about it. He does have good amount of HP. I think he's got less than a demi-human queen, which makes sense. I mean, he's supposed to be sort of an auxiliary boss. I don't really think he's supposed to be the main boss. Most of the time, we killed him first just because you could pretty easily stagger him, like I said, and just kind of bully him on the side. And the Demi-Human Queen, when it's a 3v1, I mean, she's still, at the end of the day, a Demi-Human Queen. She just doesn't have the ability to take a 3v1 and win. And if she does, you kind of weren't going to make it through to Night 2 anyways. The other configuration, Night 1, brings back a fan favorite Dark Souls 1 boss, the Centipede Demon. I bet you everybody has heard that the Centipede Demon is back, and nobody remembers that they actually fought the Centipede Demon in the base game of Dark Souls 1, because it was a joke of a fight. You could really easily wedge him into the wall and get him to fall off the map, and his arena was trash. I mean, absolute trash. It was mostly lava, and he's the guy who drops the ring that makes it so that you can walk in lava, so you weren't really using most of the arena to begin with. It was just, he was kind of a silly guy in Dark Souls. So, did they fix him in Elden Ring Nightreign? I think so. I mean, he feels like he's got a good amount of health. He has a cool new mechanic where if you sever one of his little centipede limbs, it crawls on the ground and starts attacking you, which is cool. I like that. I think that it's a cool idea. I'm honestly kind of surprised they didn't think about it in Dark Souls 1, and maybe they did, they just didn't have the logistics to do that with the engine that they had. I don't quite know that. But he's cool. I do think he could do a little bit more damage. It felt really easy for one of my teammates to just draw aggro, or somebody to just draw aggro and dodge everything and just kind of dodge tank it. And even when we didn't dodge tank and we just kind of face tanked, he wasn't that strong. Maybe we were just over leveled. I'm not totally sure. But he just didn't feel super powerful, which is fine. I mean, Night 1 bosses, I don't think they need to feel super powerful, as long as they feel like a decent enough challenge that you're going to get through. It felt like they wanted the Night 2 boss to be the actual gatekeeper for the final boss. Speaking of the Night 2 boss, let's talk about them. So, Configuration 1. My arch nemesis. A freaking Draconic Tree Sentinel and his little cohort. Holy crap. These guys felt way too overtuned. The extra fellas just felt like they had so much HP and their horses had so much HP. And we were consistently well leveled every time that I went to fight them. That is where I lost every single run. I don't think I lost a single run to a Night 1 boss. Either configuration, I just don't remember that happening at all. And I have notes that I took down from my first time, and I have footage from my second time. I don't think it happened at all. Night 2 bosses, however, Configuration 2, the boss for Configuration 2, which we'll get into, really cool, really fun fight. Never lost to them because it felt like a more fair fight. And every time we got there, we did well. The final boss, of course, killed a few of my runs. Nobody killed as many runs as the freaking Draconic Tree Sentinel and his little buddies. Alright? They had too much health. I say take about maybe 10% of their HP away, or their horse's HP at least. Take maybe 10% of that away. Just give it to DTS. That's fine with me. As like, you can keep the amount of HP in the fight the same. But those guys are way too tanky. Or, if nothing else, give them like fancy models. Don't just have them be like regular Lanedale soldiers with DTS who are like, by the way, I'm actually Radahn's best sparring partner. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. They had too much HP. Too much HP. The damage was fine. I'm totally fine with a Night 2 boss doing that much damage. And they even shook up DTS's moves itself. He has this cool, like, Placidusax thing where he goes all, like, smoky and flies into the sky with the electricity and comes down and attacks. And it's cool. And I think that that's a great change. I think that that was really, really cool because DTS is a little underwhelming. I will say his AI was a little tough in that there were a lot of times where I just got him to fireball loop me and just fireball and then fireball and then fireball and then fireball and then fireball. And meanwhile, my teammates are just killing the other two guys. And I'm just like, okay. It was kind of silly. But their HP was actually, it was just too much. It was just too much. The little guys, I'm totally fine with them being there. Just take some of that HP away. And if you're not going to take it away from the guys themselves, just take it away from their horses. Their horses have way too much HP. I mean, these guys are like pretty much dead by the time their horses are dead. And they still have too much HP because, I mean, those guys have a ton of HP. The horses have a ton of HP. DTS, I think, might even have the least HP when you take it all into account, because each guy in their horse probably has a combined total of more HP than DTS, which is ridiculous that the main boss of it has less HP than the side guys. Can you tell that I'm a bit passionate about this? I think that it's ridiculous how much HP they have. They are probably going to get dropped in the final game, and if not, it'll be a patch shortly after. Because I think the community will not like these guys, and I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that the community finds a way to really fall in love with these fellas. I just don't see it. I think it's not going to happen. I think that these guys are going to need to be patched. Now on to the other Night 2 boss. So the other Night 2 boss, we've got the Fell Omen, Morgott. I'm going to call him Margit because that's the guy that I remember the most. So Night 2 of Configuration 2, we have Margit. Margit can also invade in Configuration 1, and when I say can, he will invade after Night 1 in Configuration 1, and he'll target a specific player. And you'll see a little icon, a little circle on him, that signifies who he's targeting. His invasion, he'll chase you to the ends of the earth, too. I mean, I've seen so many memes about #1 hater in Souls history, get away from me, pursuer, he's gone. My new greatest hater is Margit, Morgott, Margarine, who cares? This dude hates you, and he's here to show it. Now, when he invades you during the day, he's a little nerfed. I think he's got less HP than his Night 2 boss. I think he's got fewer attacks. He definitely has fewer attacks. He does a whole thing in Night 2 that he doesn't do in Night 1. But he's still a fun guy. I mean, he was a cool boss fight in the base game. He was a noob check, and then after that, you know, he got juiced as Morgott. It was cool. I liked it. I like him here too. He was probably my favorite of the night bosses. I think Triceratops just barely squeaks it out over him. But I liked him in base Elden Ring. He was fun. He's got a cool moveset. Cool stuff that he does after phase transition with his like holy summon stuff. It's cool. I like him. How is he in Nightreign? He's pretty cool. I like him a lot, actually. So they added the Morgott, I believe, fight as the base. And so his base attacks, he's already in that powered up form from Elden Ring. But now he takes a little trick from his brother, Moog, and he uses some Blood Flame attacks. And it's pretty cool. He does some like Omaiwa mo Shinderu stuff. Nothing Personnel Kid teleports behind you, slices the air, and then waits for it to explode. Cool guys don't look at explosions. There was a little something with him where like sometimes he just kind of like did a slash in front of him, and then the stuff opened up like 20 feet that way. And I thought that was a little weird. It just looked odd. I would prefer him to face the direction that he's going to be attacking. I understand that maybe the model would have to turn at really weird speeds to track somebody who's rolling around. But I just think that it would be better that way. I think that it would look more correct. It just looked weird. But other than that, I mean, it was a great fight. I never lost to him, which is a bit surprising because I did feel like he was a reasonably powered up. But he was fun. And I think that that's what matters. Okay, so I know we talked about the bosses now. And we've still got the final boss. But I want to save the final boss for the end because I think it was the most interesting thing about the entire network test. It's a completely unique boss to Nightreign. It hasn't been done before. Sure, there are some animations that are the same as some other dog bosses when he goes into his triple form, but we'll save all that for later. Now, let's talk about the actual gameplay. So, at its core, it is Elden Ring. I mean, you run around in an open field and you kill some guys with RB and RT, right? You dodge with B. At its core, it's Souls. But the big defining factor and what really changes it is the Fortnite ring following you around. Now, like Fortnite, it's a ring that closes in on an island. It's not that it's constantly closing, it's that it takes set intervals and then closes fast. So you're under a lot of time pressure to be as efficient as you can be in these spaces and run through, kill enemies, pick up loot. Yes, looting is a very big part of it. Much like a looter shooter like Borderlands or Destiny 2, it's all about loot. And each loot has different rarity. You're chasing the bigger number, better person, effectively. So, white, which is the common, there's blue, which is the uncommon, there's purple, which is the rare, and then there's orange, which is the legendary. And it's very classic to really any other looter shooter. Now, certain weapons are, by default, a certain rarity, and there are different merchants around the map which have smithing tables next to them that you can upgrade the rarity. So, for example, there's just the dagger, the regular dagger from base Elden Ring, and that's a white rarity. But if you find the appropriate smithing stones, you can get it up to a gold rarity, which is cool. It's a very interesting idea. The rarities also feel pretty rare. I got 1 gold. I got 1 gold in the whole thing, and that was a Sword of Night and Flame, which I'm going to be honest, I think it's pretty cool. It's a very cool weapon in base Elden Ring, but they kind of upgraded it a little bit, where when you do the stance and you use your fire attack or your magic attack, it imbues your weapon with fire or magic depending on which of the attacks that you used. So you don't have to sit there and spam Kamehameha with it. You can Kamehameha and now your weapon deals magic damage. And so you can, it's like having an on-command weapon buff that also deals a lot of damage. It's pretty good. I liked it. But other than that, most of the time I feel like I might have gotten a purple, but I think it was mostly blues. I believe that in this boss clear, I got the Sword of Night and Flame, and my main weapon was a blue twin blade. That's it. That was my main weapon. That was what I jammed with the most. Now, each weapon, in addition to having a rarity that assigns it specific values that are in the back end that get spit out into number, damage number, there are no stat requirements for weapons. They're just bigger number, better person, and they can vary depending on what character you choose because each character has different stats in the back end, and each weapon has different scaling, much like the base game. In addition to that, though, there are little affixes that come with weapons. They're just passive bonuses that apply with you having the weapon in your inventory at all. They're usually not super meaningful. Sometimes it's like plus 6% physical attack damage, nothing crazy. But then there's other ones that are pretty neat, like periodically spawn some carrion daggers or whatever they're called above your head. And so it's just like free extra damage. Now, I do remember when I was playing, there felt like there was a little bug with that one in particular where it wasn't applying if I wasn't holding the weapon, but it would also reapply when I pulled it back out. So if I just like kept spamming it out and back in, I could basically just infinitely have those, which is probably bad and probably going to get nerfed, but maybe it won't be. Who knows? So with all that said, I think that it makes for a really interesting gameplay loop. You're trying your hardest to beat as many enemies as possible, collect as many souls as possible, so that way when you go to a bonfire, grace, whatever you want to call it, I played a lot of Dark Souls, so it's a bonfire to me, and will be a bonfire for the rest of the video. When you go up to a bonfire, you don't sit down like how you did in the base game, because they don't really, the game's really high pace. It's really quick. So they don't want you to sit there and think about your build and meticulously plan things out and just carefully consider what stat you want to take. They just say, press Y on the bonfire, press A, all right, go, get out. You're now stronger. Leave. Run. Quick. Because the circle is going to start coming any moment now. And you're not strong enough to kill DTS. You're not. You are not strong enough. So there's a lot of pressure on getting strong as fast as you can. And they've really simplified the leveling system where it's just, do you have the souls? Yes. Here's some free stats. Just take them. You're not going to put them somewhere. You're just taking them. So there are what feels like pretty meaningful jumps, like between level 1 and level 2. Vigor seems to go crazy. Like it looks like it doubles for some characters, maybe even more than that. With all that said, I like the changes. I think that they make for a very snappy, quick gameplay loop, which seems to be what they're going for based off of how they added no torrent. So you're not wasting time holding random inputs to pull torrent out. You're just like, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And you sprint your ass down the lane. I think that it's good. I like the changes a lot. The gameplay changes really make a lot of sense. And when you're actually mono fighting a boss, it is Dark Souls. It is Elden Ring. It is that Souls formula of gameplay where the bosses are very intentionally designed and you have to look for openings and punishes. And it's still Dark Souls at the end of the day. It's still Elden Ring at the end of the day. There's just so many other systems in place to make it so that you get from moment to moment quickly. I was talking about this with a friend the other day, and the way that I kind of settled on describing it is it's like if you take the entire experience of an Elden Ring playthrough and you just shove it all into 45 minutes. You just take all of the highlights of it and you just shove it into 45 minutes. Once you do all that, you fight boss on night 1, you do it all again. You're back out onto the breach, killing things, getting levels, trying to get stronger so that you might be able to have a chance at killing one of DTS's side hoes. And then the stars align. The miracle comes through. He goes down. What now? Day 3. Day 3 is very straightforward. The boss goes down and drops a little soul. You get to pick your loot, and then you go into the goop. Once you go into the goop, you get sent to this little tree area where there's Kale, a spirit merchant, there's an upgrade bench, and then there is a bonfire. You get to stack your final levels into the bonfire, whatever else you don't use in your souls, or if you're at max level, you can talk to Kale and try and get some items that you might want to make your build a little bit better. And if you have the resources, you upgrade your stuff. Then your team makes your way through the doors to the final boss. And you're greeted with this very cool looking arena. I don't know if it's going to be the same for every boss. I imagine it will be just based off of some of the promotional trailers, but it might not be. I'm really hopeful that it's not. Despite how stunning it is, it would be cool to have a unique arena for each enemy. So then in the network test, we only had access to Triceratops, as he will be referred to in this. Triceratops is a really, really cool boss. I think that he is the most fair boss out of the entire cast so far for 3 people to fight. I think that he is a joy to fight. He's really fun. His mechanics feel very conducive to 3 players going at it. I really like him. The only nitpicks I think I could find is I wish he might have had just a little bit more health. He felt like we did a lot of damage to him like probably too much damage to him at a time, but I don't know if that was just because we were so ridiculously good or he just needed more health. I think he just needed more health because it felt like that on all of my playthroughs that I got through to the final boss. Even the ones that I failed, I felt like we did more damage to him than we should have. It's really cool though. He's got very unique moves. Now, when he can split into 3 dogs. It's a very cool mechanic for a 3-person fight to go from a 3v1 to a 3v3. Really cool. I like it. I really, really like it, actually. The only issue that I have is some of the animations are shared between a lot of the dog bosses in Elden Ring, like the Red Wolf of Radagon is... It's got like the same bite attack, but other than that stuff, I mean, it's just a fun fight. And they did something really interesting in that I don't know if it's the same for all of the bosses, but they had a very dynamic camera. So once the boss decided to use his big sword, your camera would draw back so that you could see the sword if you were locked onto him. And you'd be able to see what actions he's performing and when the sword's coming to hit you. And I really appreciate that. I'm honestly kind of surprised that something like that hasn't been done in the Elden Ring base game, because it was really cool. I know that they have the camera draw back out for really large bosses, but it was more dynamic than that because it was zoomed in at a regular level because he was an irregular sized boss. But once he decided to pull that sword out and use that sword for an attack, it would draw back. And I really, really liked that. I thought that his damage was really good. The only attack that I think had maybe a little questionable damage was the fire breath attack. And I don't really know if that's just questionable damage or if I was just having a hard time reading it, so I got hit by it a lot. But, I mean, it was great. I really enjoyed the fight. So, you beat Triceratops. Now what? Well, that's where it gets a little... The game just kind of ends. I don't really know if that's going to be changed in the full release, but the game just kind of ends. You do get rewards after each completed run, and you get rewards, I think it felt like, based off of how far you got. So you get these little relic affixes that you can put on a character before they go out into the world, and some of them are pretty good. There was one that I got for the Duchess that gave her bleed on every weapon attack, so there would be more build up of the bleed on other weapon attacks, or for example, her dagger has bleed built in, and there would be more bleed build up. That is very hard to say. There would be more bleed build up on it and lead to sooner bleed procs, which was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. So that was the Elden Ring Nightreign network test. I am incredibly excited for the game to release in May. I am really eager to see how it goes. There are definitely some concerns about longevity. I'm not so sure if this game can go the distance, especially with the weird spawns dictating the rest of the match. If that's something that happens in the base game, I don't foresee a long future for this game because things will just become too optimized to be fun. There won't be any of that beautiful Dark Souls Elden Ring improv where you have a plan and then just suddenly you're like, well, this just happened and I don't know what to do about it, but I'm just going to try and roll with the punches. It's going to be a lot less of that and a lot more of, okay, well, we're going to do these characters. We're going to go out. We're going to go here, 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 because that's where you get the optimal loot spawns. And then we're just going to call it a day. You know, I hope that it's not like that. I am going to be getting the game when it releases on launch. If you are somebody like me who loves Dark Souls, Elden Ring, that whole From Software thing, I think you'll like this game. I really will. But if you're on the fence at all for any reason, just wait. Just wait to see how they try and iron out some of the kinks, because there are definitely a lot of issues that can happen based off of what I saw in the network test, like the spawns. And so if you're on the fence, just save yourself the $40 and wait. If you don't like Dark Souls, you don't like Elden Ring, why are you even here? Don't play the game. Just don't. It's not for everyone. It's a very niche game. And with all that said, I just would like to thank you for watching. I've ideated on this game review type video a few times. And if you like it, go ahead and let me know in the comments. If there's anything that you think that I could do better, also leave a comment, please. If you liked the video, like the video. If you didn't like the video, please dislike the video. It helps me know what's good and what's not. And that is something that I want. I would like to know what you guys are looking for. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. I am out of here. Bye-bye.